What's cracking, guys? Welcome to the 7th part in our Rome Total War series, in which we try to beat the game on the hardest difficulty possible. Since you guys enjoyed the previous part so much, I've decided to keep making the videos for the game in the same story format. This type of videos usually take a lot of time to make, so a sub to the channel would really be appreciated, and will guarantee you that you won't miss any future content like this. Thank you guys for the support so far. Previously we secured the northern part of the Italian peninsula by capturing Patavium and Mediolanum. Thanks to that, we managed to jumpstart the economy, and with more money flowing in, it was about time to kick this war with the Gauls into high gear. Of course, the journey to this point was not an easy one. Flavius Julius, the previous faction leader, died honorably trying to protect his men in the Battle of the Rhone River. On their way to Massilia, which was besieged at the time, he and his army were caught by surprise by the attackers of the town. The battle resulted in a Pyrrhic victory for the Gauls, despite the heroic efforts of our men. Nevertheless, thanks to those brave Romans, the southern towns managed to hold off the enemy for long enough to allow the new Roman leader time to raise an army and capture Cisalpine Gaul. A few months have passed since then. Now the barbarians are coming back, regrouped, and ready to finish what they started. After receiving the reports that the Gauls are back, the Roman leader mustered his forces, and with the help of some mercenaries, engaged the Gallic army that was guarding the mountain pass to Massilia.
Now, men, time to be about our business. Straighten the ranks, look to your officers, mark all commands when they come, and don't worry about our foes. The Gauls fool themselves and think they are our equals or better. I think they had the stench of death about them. We stand on the defensive today. Let them wear themselves out against our battle line. There is no advantage in numbers to either side. Therefore, skill and courage will be the keys to this day's battle. Yet, for all that, we are the stronger within ourselves. We are the greater warriors. Many times I have faced this enemy, and many times I have beaten them. Today, when we win, this victory will be yours as much as mine.
In order to preserve most of his forces for the battles ahead, our faction leader devised a cunning plan. He bet everything on maneuverability, knowing full well that was the only way to achieve such a victory. The Roman equites and the barbarian mercenary horsemen were sent to flank the enemy, and soon several cavalry engagements took place. After successfully charging the Gallic horse riders and killing most of them, the Romans made a dash for the enemy general. Bringing him down was the most effective way to strike fear into the hearts of the already shaken army. A few of the war bands close by managed to see the approaching equites and rushed to protect their leader. However, by the time they got there, the coward had already given up. The enemy commander was trying to flee from the battle, but in doing so, was struck down by one of the Roman horsemen. At the same time, a portion of their army managed to reach the left flank and was locked in melee. The fighting was brief, however, thanks to the news of what happened in their rear lines. It didn't take long before they decided to make a run for their lives. Needless to say, only a few managed to slip away and live to see another day. The road to Massilia was now clear. After a few days of marching, we caught up with the attackers and sent a messenger to notify the troops left inside the settlement for the upcoming fight. When the time was right, our commander addressed the men.
Take up the shield! Grasp the spear! Sharpen the sword's edge! This is a day of destiny! And fate of many will be decided in this place! Today we go into battle against the Gauls, warriors both worthy and brave in equal measure. Our task today is a noble one. To preserve the town and its people. We outnumber them by a small margin. From such small beginnings are great victories crafted. I have fought these men many times, and even now they must be praying to their false gods for mercy. They will have little enough of it from me. There is little to fear, as help is coming. Within the day, another army of ours will arrive for this battle. And before we start, just remember, they are more scared of us, true Romans to a man, than we are of them.
From what we managed to discover, the enemy was holding a strong position on the other side of the river, guarding their end of the bridge. The mercenary cavalry attempted to rush through, but was cut down almost to a man. At that moment, it became apparent that an attempt to break through that defense will only lead to devastating losses from our side. While we were pondering on our next move, the town garrison arrived and managed to occupy the nearby hill behind the barbarian line. We were not sure if they're going to defend it or engage the enemy, so we needed to cross as soon as possible in order for us to provide support. Luckily for us, our scouts managed to spot a place where the river runs shallow. That allowed us to rush through the water and meet our allies. Thanks to Mars, we managed to get in position a few moments after our garrison engaged the goals. The Equites slipped through the enemy lines, dispatching their skirmishers. And after realizing they were in the perfect place for another strike, they charged the barbarian general and secured his demise. It was time to remind our foes why it's not a good idea to mess with the Roman war machine. The signal was given, and the front line rushed down the hill. This proved to be more than what the barbarians could handle, and thus, the outcome of the battle was decided short after. Once the invaders were defeated, our general decided to crush the rebels in our near vicinity. They didn't pose much of a threat due to the low quality units that they brought to the battlefield. With one fell swoop, they were scattered, never to be seen again. Once the town was safe, we disbanded some of the mercenary units in our possession. Thanks to that, Massilia was ready for an upgrade, and the construction of a governor's villa had begun. At the same time, the citizens of Narbo Martius were still in a dire situation. The Gauls decided to launch an assault. It wasn't long before the town gates were broken. The defending garrison tried to contain the enemy near the breach, but they overwhelmed us, and soon the settlement fell. Now it's time to retake what was lost. Our army reached Narbo Martius and immediately started working on siege engines needed to breach the walls. As we were getting ready for the upcoming fight, a few of the foraging parties returned to camp with alarming news. Looks like the barbarians have sent a distress call, and another one of their armies was approaching our position. We hastily deployed our men close to one of the villages surrounding the town, and set a surprise for the incoming horde. As soon as the enemy came out of the woods, they charged forward, oblivious of the ambush awaiting them. Once our line was engaged in melee, the general ordered the hidden troops to advance. They charged the units at the back, which allowed our cavalry enough time to kill the Gallic commander. The battle was fierce, and soon chaos ensued. Groups of infantry were scattered left and right, trying to hold their ground, while the cavalry was maneuvering in between. In the end, Roman training and discipline proved decisive for this battle. The enemy was defeated, and the town was back in our hands. A few months have passed since we freed Narbo Martius from Gallic rule. In that time, Massilia had already begun training more troops needed for the war effort. When the general was sure that there would be enough men left to keep the peace, we gathered the rest and we started making our way towards Lugdunum, the next barbarian settlement. After a few days of marching, the troops were exhausted, so we had to hold our advance. Coincidentally, we were in the same spot where Flavius Julius lost his life a few years prior. When the new faction leader noticed that, he ordered a watchtower to be constructed, marking the spot in his honor. That building served a dual purpose. It was there not only as a monument in memory of a few brave soldiers, but also to act as an outpost and help protect that part of the border. When the construction was done, it revealed that, indeed, there were more enemies amassing close by. One of them slipped through and besieged Massilia. However, the faction leader was confident in his fellow countrymen. He knew that they were more than capable to deal with this kind of threat, even without the help of the army. After the men were ready to proceed, we found ourselves once again on the move, and soon we were outside the walls of Lugdunum. While we were busy with the construction of a battering ram, news came in that the warband, previously sighted in our lands, was no more. Unfortunately, the celebration was cut short when we saw another relief force on the horizon. The Gauls were refusing to go down without a fight. Upon quick assessment of the surrounding lands, our commander chose the perfect location for us to meet the foe. On our way to the settlement, we noticed a steep hill, which was ideal for our ranged units and was easily defendable. The decision to deploy our men on it was the most sound thing to do at the time. As the enemy got closer, we started pouring down projectiles and fire upon them. Not long after, we managed to rout the first wave. When the main army started climbing the hill, they also enjoyed a nice warm shower of arrows. Or at least before the Roman cavalry crashed into their leader, stationed on one of the flanks. After losing him, they fell into disarray, and panic did the rest. After this decisive victory, Lugdunum surrendered. Before making our next move, however, it was time to replenish some of the losses sustained from all the fighting. New units were also recruited from Italia and sent to assist with the upcoming campaigns. It was a good decision to muster more men, because trouble found its way once again to our doorstep. The Spanish, probably offended by my comment in the previous video, brought a full force and besieged one of our towns. Our faction leader reacted quickly to the threat and managed to join forces with the reinforcements coming from the boot. Exhausted from the forced march, we had to build a fort and secure our rest. Its location was roughly equal distance away from Lugdunum and Narbo Martius. When we were preparing to move out, we received a report that our friends the Gauls launched another counterattack on Lugdunum and were now besieging the settlement. We had to make a choice: return to the north and help against the Gauls, or meet the Spanish army and hope that the garrison in Lugdunum can hold their own. Statistically, they had a better chance of achieving victory, so we decided to risk it and rush to repel the Celtiberians. The die was cast. We engaged the foe in the biggest battle so far in this campaign. After a few words from the commander, our battle line was ready to meet the enemy. We noticed that the Spanish cavalry was concentrated mainly on the left flank, so the reserves were ordered to reinforce that location. The fighting was especially hard there. Even the general had to step in to help. One after another, the Celtiberians fled, spreading disarray amongst their ranks. Not long after, the signal to retreat was given, and their whole army was on the run. Unfortunately for them, there was no escape from our cavalry. In the end, their force of 2,600 was reduced to mere 400 lucky survivors, who fled our lands for good. After hearing that their buddies were defeated in the south, the Gauls politely excused themselves and lifted the siege. Now with enough room to breathe, we managed to organize the next move against the barbarians. It took us a few months to boost the garrisons in all the cities close to the border. However, we were now ready to continue our offensive. The Senate was pleased with our progress, so they decided to give us another assignment. The target this time was the city of Salona, in Illyricum. Since we already had such plans, and since the treasury was doing so well, we decided that now was the ideal time to set it in motion. The invasion required a new force to be raised, so our cities began recruiting more units. Meanwhile, our faction leader besieged Lemonum. When the battering ram was complete, the assault commenced, and before the day had passed, we took control of the new land. When we marched into the settlement, however, we were met by a handful of people. Something was off. This was the second town that we take with so little inhabitants. That is when the realization kicked in. Due to the ongoing war, the barbarian cities were depleted of population, which is why we did not see any large armies from them in the field. Seizing the opportunity, we divided our forces and immediately started making our way north to the next Gallic stronghold. Soon after, the town of Lugdunum was also brought into the fold. At that time, we finished recruiting the men needed for Illyria, so our fleet was ordered to get them safely across the Adriatic Sea. When we set foot in Illyricum, we had to make sure our men were well rested from the voyage. As soon as they replenished their strength, we made our move on the city of Salona. The defenders were deployed in the city streets. When we got closer, the engagement became nothing more than a throwing contest. Javelins were seen flying left and right, as each side was trying to soften up the other. We had to lure them out of the narrow streets in order for us to conserve our men, so we fell back to a more open ground. The enemy took the bait and followed us to the edge of town, where the rest of our army was waiting. After a few volleys, most of them melted away, exposing the city center. Surrounded on all sides, the defenders tried to hold their ground, but were swiftly cut down by our men. With a foothold in Illyria, any future expansion to the east was now secured. After the fall of Salona, the Gauls decided to make one last effort to retake lost lands. Unfortunately for them, our defenses proved to be stronger, and most of their war bands were defeated. The last one of their armies was intercepted near Lugdunum. When we were done setting up the formation, the town garrison also joined the battle, but on the opposite side of the barbarian army. It was time to make a nice and delicious Roman sandwich. Upon noticing the fact that they got surrounded, the Gauls tried to break through our line. Their leader slammed his cavalry into the hastati, but the rest of his army had a different idea. As soon as they saw him fighting for his life, they decided to make a run for the hills. In the retreat, we managed to catch the general, including some pesky druids and a unit of chosen swordsmen. And so, the last-ditch effort from the Gauls resulted in a massive failure. After that engagement, they had no other choice but to return to their capital with their tails between their legs. In the winter of 247 BC, we made our move against the Gallic city of Alesia. That was the last territory that they had in modern-day France. The end of the war was in sight. If we were successful in capturing the settlement, the Gauls would be expelled to Hispania, which will effectively cripple their army and economy in the process. That's where I'm gonna end the part, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the story. I'll catch all you lovely folks out there in the next one. Roman Victor.